Welcome to Bits and Pieces Quilting. Today I am asking myself, what have I gotten myself into? So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Michelle, and as you may have seen in my happy birthday video, Jason and I are relocating back to Canada. And so that means packing and sorting and cleaning, and that's all happening in the sewing room right now. And as part of the cleaning and sorting, I have discovered about 3 meters of this fabric, or 3 yards. And this, I don't know if you can see it on camera, this is a beautiful red and white fabric representing the Sydney Swans. They are an AFL team, and we have loads of friends who are huge fans. But with 3 yards of fabric and a plan to relocate back to Canada, I'm thinking, I don't need this in Canada. There's not going to be a whole lot of use for Sydney Swans licensed fabric in Canada. I used some of this to make some of the sports quilts for friends, and I've used it for other little doodads here and there, but I've still got so much to use. But the kicker is that we're leaving tomorrow at lunchtime to go to Sydney. So I think I would like to cut into this and make as many things as possible for some of our friends in Sydney as a gift to tell them how much they mean to us, to get the fabric out of my collection, and to see what I can accomplish in my sewing room in less than a day. I've also gone through my supplies. I have a few zippers that match, sort of, or at least coordinate with the fabric, so there's an opportunity for some zippered pouches. If you've seen some of the videos, you'll know that I'm a big fan of the Coda crossbody bag, so I think that there's going to be a Coda crossbody bag made out of this, and I may even try and squeeze out a table runner or two. So I've got less than 24 hours, and I am going to dive in and see what I can create. So it is just past 2 p.m., and we are leaving just after lunch tomorrow. So, and I need sleep. I need probably a good 8 hours sleep. So, not a lot of time to try and get some of these projects together. Now, I can do the hand stitching for any table runners, either in the car or over the course of the weekend at our friend's house. I'm not worried about that element. And I do want to start with table runners because I think those are pretty impactful and they'll make a good dent in the fabric. Given the fabric, it's got to be 2-color. There's no, I could introduce black maybe, but I don't want to. I want to just stick with the red and white. And so for quick table runners, the first thing I thought of was my orange peel table runner. And if that video is out, I think it'll be released by this point. That was a great option. And I was very excited about making some orange peel table runners because those orange peels look a little bit like the footballs. But I need my other machine for that. And that machine got packed just a couple of days ago. So I think Jason would not tolerate me opening up that box and pulling out the sewing machine for this last minute craziness. So we're not going to do that. Then I got to thinking, what other templates do I have that might make a really cool, simple, impactful, and quick table runner? So I think I'm going to use my drunkard's plate template. And I think I'm just going to do that standard setting with the alternating circles in the middle, red, white, red, white. I think that's going to look really, really good. We'll see how the video progresses. If it's something you'd like a full tutorial on, we can discuss that further down the line. I have also taken about 10 minutes just to tidy up the sewing room and load up a few bobbins. So that's ready. And I'm going to treat myself to a new blade because this blade, probably should have changed it weeks ago, maybe even a month ago. But no, I always leave my blades way longer than I should. So that's the old blade. I'm just going to dig into my trash bin here to see if I can find just a little piece of fabric just to wipe off some of this blade residue that's built up here. and perhaps on the little screw centerpiece. I also like to do a little bit of paper crafting. So whenever I change my blade, I put it into this old blade container with a little piece of paper in here called paper, because I do have a Fiskars paper cutter that uses these blades. So I will try and get a little more life out of that blade in my paper cutter sometime in the future. But now is time for a new sewing blade, being careful not to get any of this residue on anything. Oh, I'm gonna cut with this blade, and I'm gonna think, why did you wait so long? I don't know, maybe I'm trying to just be too frugal. So making sure I've just got one off this little stack of blades, being very careful. These things are so sharp. Getting a new blade in here, that will hopefully help me be a little bit more efficient, prevent mistakes, and speed up the process. I think I've narrowed it down. I'm going to try and do 2 table runners at once. The backing fabric is going to be the Swans fabric. It's going to be the red and the white on the front. So I think those are going to look good, but we'll see how we go along. I want to focus on the table runners first. So I'm going to just spend about 5 more minutes doing some math to figure out what size I want my pieces and how that's going to turn out into a table runner. And then it's cut and sew and get to work. All right, so this is the Swans fabric. I was kind of half debating my plan last night. So I had the foresight to wash and dry the fabric last night and iron it. And I almost always store my fabric washed. I'm not really sure why this one wasn't, but I also found some white for the background. It's pressed and sitting over there. And like all the best quilt patterns, I've scratched it out on a tiny, tiny little scrap of paper. I think it's going to work though. One of the things I wanted to do in terms of efficiency was to make sure that one half of the fabric, that the table runner was the width of half of my fabric. So I've measured this fabric, and 22 inches is about the maximum width that I can get for my table runner. So I've adjusted my measurements a little bit here, and I should probably write it out on a slightly larger scrap of paper so I don't get lost. But that is going to mean I'm going to cut my drunkard's path pieces at 6.5 inches square, then use the template to cut those apart. Then I have an inner border that's going to be cut at 2 inches, and that'll finish at 1.5 inches. And then an outer border cut at 2.5 inches to finish at 2 inches. And then 2.5-inch binding strips. So with a plan, I am going to start cutting, and I'm going to really enjoy my new blade. So is there anything worse than making a huge mistake when you're under a time crunch? Let me show you what I've done, and let me show you how I'm going to have to fix it. Thankfully, I only cut one strip of 6.5-inch fabric, one fabric strip that was 6.5 inches wide. So that was this square. And then I thought I would cut the smaller piece of the template first, so I did. Then I went to line this up on the 6.5-inch line and realized that's not right. I am missing a lot of fabric here. So I went back to some online tutorials and videos to figure out how to use the tool properly. And I have 2 options. Option 1 is I can back this all up. The next line, unfortunately, is 5.5 inches. So I could cut these down to 5.5 inches. Yeah, that's one option. That's not going to get me the size I want, though, to maximize. Because this print is fairly large, I want these pieces to be as large as possible. So I think I'm going to shove all of that aside, and I'm going to now put the template together like this, and using my larger ruler, if I want to be able to cut a 6-inch square and still have enough space for this, I am going to need an 8-inch block. Maybe a 7 3/4 I could get away with, but after the trauma, maybe 7.5 I could get away with. Yeah. You know what? I think I can do, oh, yeah, 7.5 inches will work. So I'm going to cut a new strip. I'm going to test that, and then I'm going to keep going. We'll see how the day pans out. I may see if I can come back and rescue these pieces maybe make something a little smaller. We'll see. But I'm going to dive back in 7.5 inches, which will then give me 6.5 inch finished blocks, we hope. All right, we are back in business. These 7.5 inch squares are working really well. I first am cutting the little, what is this, the little pie-shaped piece. So that's working well. New blade is amazing. I probably should be using a 28mm blade instead of this 45mm blade for this inner curve. Even with a brand new blade, I'm finding that it's a bit of a tight curve, but I'm making it work because, as you can imagine, the 28mm blade is packed already. So there's a little bit of crunching of plastic there, but I think we're okay. And, I'll just maybe change the blade again before I use it when I get back to Canada. So that is working really well. That's good. Not too much waste either, which I'm grateful for. So I'm going to do the same thing with the white. And I've got the reds here all cut out for 2 table runners. So if I can make the same kind of progress with the white, I'll figure out what to do with these miscuts later. And it's going well. All right, it is 4:30 now, and after a little bit of a false start by miscutting my first strip of Swans fabric, I now have enough Drunkard's Path pieces for the 2 table runners. Not quite the place I wanted to be, but these were so fun, and I absolutely see some more Drunkard's Paths in my future. The first one took me a minute to dial in my process, but these are so satisfying. I have noticed the way that I cut, and let me turn them around actually so you can see them, that because it's a directional fabric, this is sort of face up, right, where you can read the logo and the names and the words. And so I'm glad I actually have enough to make 2 table runners, because what I'm going to do is try and keep these together to make the 4 patches so that there is right side up and upside down like this. Because if I use these, this would have to go down into this corner, and now my words are sideways. Same thing here, words are sideways. So pairing those 2 together, I have right side up and upside down, so no matter what side of the table you're on, you can see words that are right side up. And then those are going to get paired with these ones because they are also going to be right side up, upside down, or right the same sides together. So that works really well, because if I put these in, same thing, the words are going this way rather than this way. So I'm going to pair them up like that. I'm going to make my 4 patches. There'll be 4 patches for each table runner. Then I'll look at borders, and the table runner tops are going to be finished. Time check was 4:30. Got about another hour or so before I need to put dinner together, so I'm hoping to get these quilt tops done before dinner. The table runners are coming together really well. I have the center Drunkard's Path pieces all sewn together. So there's 3 of them in each table runner. I have the words all lined up, so no matter what side of the table you're on, your words read right side up, which is exciting. I thought, though, that I would double check how much fabric I truly have before I make any further decisions. So I'm glad I did too, because despite many, many, many years of sewing, I still seem to find it really challenging to estimate exactly how much fabric I'm going to need as I design along the way. So I have purposefully designed the table runners so that I can get 2 of them across the width of the fabric, so that one length will give me the backings for 2 table runners. But before I decide on the final width of these borders, I want to make sure I have enough fabric. So if you think that I'm probably going to need, if I have a 2 or a 3-inch border out the side here, and I'm going to need a little extra for the backing, that will start there. And if I drag this along, I'm going to need a similar amount on this side. And if I fold up what's left, which isn't really all that much, that's how much I have for borders and binding. And if I've got two projects, that's about 11 inches. So I could do two borders. I need three strips for each border, two for the long sides and one for the two short sides. So a 3-inch border will work because I can cut three pieces out of this and three pieces out of that to have enough borders for the two table runners. But that leaves a big question as to whether or not I will have enough binding. So I have a few other pieces here that I can probably scrounge together one binding. I think I'm going to do this anyway because I could always put a white binding if I don't have enough of this. So that is my backup plan. I'd love to have enough of this, but we will see. And of course, this means that all of my lovely thought about zippers and zippered pouches and a Coda crossbody bag, yeah, I don't have nearly as much fabric as I think I did. So really glad I started with the table runners. Really glad I didn't cut bits and pieces for all kinds of different things. I am going to cut the borders and get those onto these table runners. Then I'm going to cut the backing, and then I'm going to see what's left for bindings. The table runners are done. As a time check, it is 8:30, so time is ticking along. Dinner was great. The borders are on, and I have cut the backing pieces with not a lot of extra, but that's okay. I will be pin basting it, and I'm going to just walk from here over to the machine and machine quilt it. So the overlap for the backing doesn't have to be too big. And I'm so thrilled. I double checked the closet and I had just enough to get two pieces of binding. So both will be bound with the red, which is really exciting. So the next step is to cut a little bit of batting and get those quilted. So what's left? Obviously, I was delusional about making some zippered pouches and a Coda crossbody bag, so that's just not going to happen. I did have this miscut, so I do have 6 pieces here that are or were 6.5 inches square. I'm not going to throw these away, of course. I'm going to hang on to them and see if I can salvage them and turn them into something. Not really sure what. And the only other decent sized piece I have is this piece. So between all of this, I might be able to get some kind of a decent zippered pouch, but I am not going to race around and try and get that finished for tomorrow. We have a friend here in Canberra, and so sometime in the next week and a half or so before we actually move, I might see if I can make something out of this, or I may end up just packing it up and bringing it back to Canada and then seeing if I can make something of it all. And if it turns out beautifully, then I can always put it into the post and send it back here to friends. So not bad. Out of my 3 yards or almost 3 meters of fabric, I think I'm going to get two really fabulous table runners and then just have a few pieces of leftover. Really happy with the table runners. I will quilt them up, like I said. I think they have a bit of a sporty kind of look to them. This almost looks like I don't know, like a target or a goal or a landing spot or something. And then the dramatic red and white, I think, looks really great. So off to quilt them. I'll add a binding to them, and I will probably do the hand stitching on the binding in the car on the drive to Sydney tomorrow. And here are the final table runners. I have both of them finished, the binding sewn on, and I've even attached my little label to the back. I think that looks really cute. So I have to hand stitch the binding down. I always hand stitch my bindings. I much prefer the way that that looks. But I will either do that in the car or I will do that while sitting around and visiting with our friends. So I think they've turned out really well. Nice and flat, because there's not a lot of piecing here, a really good use of the fabric. And really, you could say that it's double-sided with the Sydney Swans fabric all over the backside as well. So No zippered pouches and no crossbody bag, but also I think a really good use of this fabric, and I'm excited to present these table runners to some real fans of the team. Thanks very much for watching this video. It's been a little bit of a chaotic day in the sewing room, but I'm pretty pleased with what I managed to accomplish. There's a few finishing things that'll have to be done by hand, but I've got a 3-hour car ride ahead, so an opportunity to do some of that, and I can probably put some of the final touches on when I get to our friend's house. Thanks very much for watching, and don't forget to make the most of your fabric bits and pieces.